Okay, so now we're ready to fill up our piping bag. So I have a reusable piping bag, but a lot of times you can just use a plastic one, or if you really don't have any of the stuff, you can use like a Ziploc bag and just cut the corner of it and try using that. I actually have a fairly wide eclair attachment on this right now, and I have my piping bag here. The couple of ways you can fill this. One of the easier ways is you can just stick this into a like a measuring cup or something like this, and just kind of like stick this in here and then use that to fill. I think it's easy enough. I've done this a few times where I just hold this with one hand, make sure this is pointed up, and then I use my other hand to actually just scoop in the chew that we made a few minutes ago. Right, so I'm just going to scoop this in here. You don't have to fill it all the way up. You don't have to put all of it in. But I usually just get a good amount in here. And that way, and this way I can just hold it with one hand and do this with the other hand. So now that I have this like kind of mostly filled up, I use up maybe 2/3 of the chew that I had. I then sort of flatten this out. And I'll fold the piping bag, and then I'll kind of just push it, push the dough out to the end, to the corner there. And the way that you want to pipe this is you can make these pretty much any size that you want. They're supposed to be pretty much like one bite, so don't make them too big. I also don't like to necessarily make them too small because I think people appreciate them when they're at least some type of substantial size. And the other key is you want to make them all the same size, because we're going to cook this. The oven's preheating right now. Typically you want it at 180 degrees Celsius, which ends up being about 390 degrees Fahrenheit. So whether it's convection or standard oven, doesn't really matter. That's what it's preheating at right now. And so since you're not going to open the oven until it's all done, you want them all to be fairly consistent. And if you screw something up, feel free to just use a dough scraper like this, scrape it off, stick it back in, and do it again. So the way that I pipe is squeeze with my right hand, lift this up, and that's about the size that I make them. Now, this is looking like a Hershey's Kiss, which is actually what I don't want, but I'll fix that in a little bit. This is roughly the size that I make them, is something like this. Now, I'm not the best at piping, and my pastry chef instructor kind of made the comment at the time saying he was actually an Italian guy who was in France as a pastry chef, and he said, you cannot learn to pipe in one day. So as a result, that's true. I'm not the best at this, but the important thing is you want to try to get consistency in terms of size. And if you can do that, then you're most of the way there in terms of your piping skills there. And like I said, we'll fix this sort of Hershey's Kiss type point at the end later. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm using my dough scraper to kind of push the dough from the ends towards the middle, and that way I'm using up as much of the dough as I can. Okay, so now that this dough is mostly used up, I'm going to open up my bag and add more dough in here. Kind of like I did the first time, I'm just going to kind of hold it, make a big hole here, and stick the dough into here from the chew from the mixing bowl that I had earlier. And there's my oven telling me that it's ready. so this is pretty much all of the dough. And assuming I don't sort of really mess something up, this is the dough that I'm going to end up using for all of my chouquettes. So you guide with your hand on the bottom, you squeeze with your hand on the top, and let it up. That one in. Okay, looking pretty good. If you get a little air bubble like that, it's not a big deal. It's fairly common. Okay. I'm going to squeeze out some more dough. That's in the bag. In case there's a little bit of dough left, I do have a second pan here just in case, you know, can fit, I don't know, one or two more of these. If they fit, great. If you just end up using one, that's fine too. This is like the last one. If you want to push this in, make sure you get all the dough out, as much of the dough as you can out at least. That's about all I can do. Now, I said earlier I'm going to fix these ones that look kind of like these Hershey Kisses because the tops don't look right. Essentially all you want to do there is grab a cup with some water and you're going to moisten your finger and you're just going to like push down on that with your finger. These are actually okay if it kind of just curls down like that. You want your finger to be wet so that it doesn't stick, but you're essentially just going to push down on these a little bit in that sense, like that. And trust me in the sense that like when these are all done and cooked, they'll look fine. Like that. We can just make this more like a circle here. Same with something like this. Yep. That's fine too. Over this one. And the same here. Okay. Now, the last step to these chouquettes is we need pearl sugar. So we're going to sprinkle pearl sugar on top of all of these. And you want to make sure that you sprinkle a liberal amount on top of these. Now, pearl sugar, it's not always the easiest thing to find, but if you do go to a specialty market, you can probably find it there. You can also buy it online, so and that's actually where I bought this stuff. It's pearl sugar. It's kind of like regular sugar. It's just the granules are much bigger. But I would not use regular sugar to compensate because regular sugar is just not. It's not going to be the same. It's actually not going to be very good if you use regular sugar. So, really out for pearl sugar. If you want to use chocolate chips or something like that, you can do that as well. I actually have never tried that, but from what I read, it's actually okay. So once this is up, that's kind of what it's going to look like. I'm going to pop them in. These are all going to puff up. There's a little bit of space between them so that they'll puff up okay. And then we'll have our Chouquettes. Okay, so I hope you can see that. These are the Chouquettes in the oven. As you can see, they've puffed up a lot and they're starting to brown. I usually like to get them a little bit more golden brown on the top, and then that's when I'll take them out. So it's been about 15 minutes, and that's usually about the amount of time that it takes to cook these. And like I said before, when I made these, I do tend to make these pretty big, so I probably make these 2 times, maybe even 3 times as big as traditional Chouquettes, mainly because you know, I just don't like the pipe necessarily that much, and I just like them big, and I like them sort of more substantial like this. So, you know, mine are more the size of, say, golf balls, as opposed to maybe the size of like a much smaller Chouquette. So that's what we're looking at. The one on the front left kind of looks deformed, so when we have some that come out looking like that, usually that's one that, you know, I'll just eat. But, you know, as you can see, it is getting there. If you look kind of closely, you'll see the little bits of pearl sugar on top and how that's gone. And if you actually take a cross-section of one of these later, you'll see that the inside of these it's mostly air. So there is a big air pocket in the middle, typically. So they're really light and fluffy to eat. They're really good when they are warm. But the other thing that we can do, which I actually do plan to do for, you know, maybe half if not all of these, is I actually do make them into cream puffs. So I take some whipping cream and I actually make some cream, and I slice them in half and I stick cream in the middle of them, and that's actually how I like to prepare these for parties and such. But this is almost done, so I'm going to be taking this out in a few minutes. Okay, so this is what we're left with. As you can see, these are pretty big. You know, this is kind of my hand and how big they are. They're still very hot, so they are pretty big. But this is just how I make them. Now you can make them much smaller when you pipe them. Just make them smaller, and if that's what you want to do. I do have one confession to make, which is earlier when I did start piping these up here, as you can see, where instead of them being like Hershey Kisses, which is actually fairly common, when the top started to sort of curve off to the side, that's actually a sign that your dough is still too thick and you really need to add more egg to that mixture. I kind of noticed it back when I was even doing the mix, where I added that half egg in there, and then it kind of made that inverted triangle, but it still wasn't dripping off as much as I would have wanted it to, and I probably should have added the other half egg in there, but I just got lazy and didn't feel like doing it at the time. So my dough was a little bit thicker than it should have been. So you know, if you want to make better dough, you know, the consistency you want is something a little bit more runnier than what I wanted. I was really trying to avoid having a batter that was too runny, but as you can see, the spacing was okay. Like none of the Chouquettes are actually touching each other. I'm actually going to wait for these to cool down. When they cool down, I'm going to actually make them into cream puffs. So I'm going to make some cream, and I'm going to make some whipped cream, and I'm going to you know, I'm going to cut these in half, and then we'll actually see what happens. Now, if you want to see what the inside looks like that's the one that I chose to say, hey, that's kind of the, you know, the ugliest one that I see up here, although a few of these other ones aren't so great looking either. And so we'll take a look here, and as you can see, if I open this up, you know, you'll see that there's like a little hole there, right, like that, and that's kind of what these look like. You'll see this little hole, but if you eat it, it tastes pretty good. So yeah, there's our Chouquettes for the day.